Severance's second season finale finally answered some big questions, but it also posed a lot of new ones. Let's take a closer look at Severance's season 2 finale and some of the show's most important symbolism to figure out what it all means, and what might be coming next. Before we begin unpacking the mysteries, let's quickly recap what went down in the episode. The finale opens inside the birthing cottage that Cobell and Devon snuck Mark into at the end of the previous episode. There, Cobell confirms not only that there's still time to save Gemma, but that the solution lies in the dark hallway, which she's surprised to learn Mark already knows about. What Lumon Industries has actually been up to, the point of all of this work the Innies have been doing, has been one of the central mysteries of the show, both for us as viewers and the characters themselves.
What if the cost of that help is that you're murdering people 8 hours a day and you don't even know it?
Now, we finally have an answer. The files they complete have all become personas that can then be used to create someone's innie. It turns out that all this time, Mark has been creating those files for Gemma. He's so far done 24 out of the total 25 required to finish the project. That is, to create a totally blank slate persona of Gemma that exists without any of her previous memories. Actually getting her out will be no easy task. It turns out that the severance chips only work for that person's designated floor, so Mark will have to switch between his innie and outie selves and have them work together to save her. York completes Cold Harbor, the 25th file, and it sets the chaos in motion. Milchick arrives to celebrate with the choreography and merriment department. Mark makes a break for it to go save Gemma, and Helly manages to lock Milchick in the bathroom with the help of Dylan. Mark is attacked by Drummond as he attempts to get into the black hallway. But Lorne, who was pissed that Drummond was about to sacrifice another one of her goats, we'll get into that later, saves the day. Mark takes Drummond hostage, but the switch between his innie and outie selves in the elevator leads to Drummond's demise. As Helly attempts to rally the members of the marching band to fight back, Mark finally makes his way to the place where Gemma is being kept, an empty room where she's made to take apart a crib as a test of whether any of the memories of her trauma remain. We see that, even in this state, with all of her memories and her entire sense of self wiped, the deeper feelings of her life still remain. She's confused and afraid, but still feels that safe connection to Mark, and so chooses to make a break for it with him against the warnings of her captors. But when they finally reach the elevator, they both return to their innie personas, Mark S. and Miss Casey. Dylan gets to have his own badass moment of standing up for himself and others. And Mark and Miss Casey make it to the stairwell that leads to the outside world. Upon entering the stairwell, Miss Casey turns back into Gemma. But innie Mark pauses, and Helly appears. So what drives his final choice? And what does all of this really mean? And there's been a question of reintegration throughout the show. Once separated, can these two minds really be put back together? Our first experience with attempted reintegration came with Petey in Season 1, and it did not go well for him, unfortunately. This explored the physical issues that can come from reintegration, the sickness and even death. But the show has become more and more interested in the psychological limitations, the impossibility of attempting to merge what is now essentially two separate minds into one cohesive one. While the innies were copied from the outies, their experiences of life have caused them to diverge in important ways, how they see themselves and the world and their place in it. While this of course comes across in the big splits in personalities and choices, we can even see it in smaller things. For example, the difference between the way they move in their innie and outie form. Gemma, for example, runs confidently and efficiently, while Miss Casey flounders and trips along. These people may share bodies, but they are on every level different people. Some find a way to deal with this positively, like Dylan choosing to save his innie instead of retiring him, and even writing him a kind note that inspires him to make a stand. This represents the way that we can choose to protect our inner selves even as the onslaught of everything around us, especially in our work lives, seems to seek to crush us. On the other end of the spectrum is Helly and her vicious outie, Helena. Helena sees the innies as disposable, but Helly believes in her own humanity and is willing to fight for it. Mark lies somewhere in the middle. Outie Mark doesn't seek to harm innie Mark necessarily, but he doesn't truly recognize his humanity as a separate self. And so he doesn't see the moral issue with asking any Mark to reintegrate to save himself, because he doesn't truly see that any Mark isn't him anymore. The two are able to have an actual conversation through the use of a camcorder. Outie Mark relays the plan to save Gemma and reintegrate Any Mark to return back to normal life. But Any Mark realizes that reintegration isn't a merging of the two consciousnesses, but just an erasure of his. When Outie Mark is asking him to go along with the reintegration plan, he's essentially asking him to sign his own death warrant. Any Mark has to come to terms with the fact that the person that put him in this situation, even if that person is to some degree himself, will not be the one to save him. And this is what leads to his final choice. In this world that seeks to strip away any amount of personal decision-making from the Ennies, the choices they do make matter all the more.
You and your family created hell, and you're going to burn in it.
By fighting back, Helly and Dylan are able to totally upend the power structure on their floor. Cobell making the choice to help free Gemma makes the plan possible. And her choice to be very blunt with Any Mark about the realities of his situation is also what helps push him towards his final choice. There's of course also that major choice of the Outies that rests at the core of the show. The choice to essentially enslave part of themselves in order to allow more freedom for the rest. And all of that is what makes Any Mark's choices at the end of this season so powerful. He does go along with the plan to free Gemma, risking everything to get her out of this hell and back out into the free world. Finding and freeing Gemma was the major thrust of his arc this season, so he doesn't want to stop now so close to the finish line. But he also does genuinely care for her. In the same way her memories of love for him remained even in the version of herself that was almost completely void of concrete memories, Any Mark does still feel that deep remaining love for Gemma. Wiley's care for Gemma continues to confirm that love is one of the few things that can transcend severance. This version of Mark is different. In the same way that time or physical distance apart can change a relationship, the distance created by both his severance and his separate experience of life in that state has altered the very fabric of this love. His choice to go after a life with Helly signifies this break. The psychological tether between him and his Outie has become so fractured, and he realizes that he must make this major decision for himself. Just Mark S., the Any, not Mark the integrated person. He wants Gemma to be able to have her freedom, but he knows that his life is taking a different path now. This ending sees every character taking a step out into the scary unknown. Gemma is essentially left to re-enter the world alone. In the same way that her supposed death was traumatic for Outie Mark, now she has to watch as her love is ripped away from her so soon after getting the feeling of it back. In her, Lumon had attempted to create what was essentially a human severed from its humanity. Someone who was alive and able to work, of course, but who did not experience or remember pain or trauma. But in her final moments, we can see that none of this was ever truly erased, but rather just repressed, and now has come flooding back. In the final shot, we see Mark and Helly running down the hallway in slow motion, representing the way that attempting to escape this confine, both psychologically and physically, is like running in quicksand, slowing you down and constantly threatening to pull you under. But it also conveys what a major moment this is in their lives. We often feel like time dilates during major moments, zipping by in an instant or slowing way down, to the point that we feel every heartbeat. This shot calls to mind the famous ending of The Graduate, where we get to stay with the pair just a little longer after their grand escape, as the reality of their choices begins setting in. Finally, the frame freezes, capturing them in the moment, and fades to red. We don't get to find out if they successfully escaped or how, because that isn't the most important thing right now. The most important thing is the fact that they made the choice to try, to fight for themselves and each other. While Severance is filled with symbolism and deep theming, there were some major symbols that were of particular importance in the finale. The Lumon goats have been a mysterious presence for a long time, seeming to exist in a totally different part of the corporation for some unknown purpose. Goat sacrifices to deities have been a part of human rituals for millennia, and it continues on here even in the sleek, empty corporate world of Lumon Industries. The sacrificed goats are used as kind of spirit guides for the completed test subjects, and they also serve as a metaphor for the way that, at this company, life is seen as something to be used and disposed of as needed for some larger purpose. The people who care for the goats feel that they must help in this cycle, that they're just there to play their part. But as with everyone else, they begin to realize that they can choose their own paths. Balloons and balloon-head people have also been a recurring theme. The balloon heads recall the idiom of one being filled with hot air, but also the idea of getting carried away with oneself. In the title sequence, Mark is literally carried away by his balloon head Innie. This can be seen to tie into the ending, where Outie Mark is carried away by Innie Mark, who, having found his own sense of self, has decided to diverge from the set path. The mysterious winding hallways of Lumon have long recalled the Labyrinth of Myth. In the myth, King Minos requested that the labyrinth be built to imprison the Minotaur, and then humans were forced into the labyrinth as sacrifices. But wanting her lover Theseus to survive, Ariadne, one of King Minos' daughters, got info from the labyrinth's architect on how to escape, and thus Theseus was able to live. The black hallway visualizes the scary unknown, but also, in a way, the metaphorical light at the end of the tunnel. It's only through going through the darkness that Innie Mark is able to not only achieve his goal, but also begin getting clarity of mind. The white hallways bathed in red in the ending of course call to mind the danger of the situation, but also the severing of this artery of Mark's life. As he and Helly run, the lights cycle between this bright white and dark red, calling to mind the mystery of the options that lay ahead for them. Continuing to be trapped in the crisp corporate world, more danger, or something else entirely. Now that a third season has been confirmed and we know that we will be getting more to the story, what are the biggest questions you're hoping to have answered in Season 3? Let us know in the comments.
That's the take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.